Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life in 1946. Here's the Blu-ray, and yes, of course, I didn't forget, but I didn't review this when I said I would. I said it'd be the first one that I reviewed back after Christmas, because of course I did watch it on Christmas Eve, and yes, It's a Wonderful Life. This is my third viewing now, and I'll try and upload this, before the end of New Year's Day, because of course the festive film that it is. And yes, this film really means something to me. I first saw it, surprisingly and shockingly, I only saw it in 2016 for the first time. I got it in 2015, the Blu-ray, and it was sealed, and I was going to open it then and watch it that Christmas. But then something happened, we watched something else, and then, basically I waited a whole year because I thought there's no point watching it for the first time in another month. Although, of course, you can, of course, it's just a stunning film in general, but I think of course I wanted to wait till Christmas, watched it Christmas Eve, and then the 2 years afterwards, including this year, I have watched it on Christmas Eve as well without fail. And basically this film, of course, now is one of the most beloved, if not the most beloved Christmas film of all time. And I think for me it's by far the best, even better than the other Christmas film that's not really a Christmas film, Die Hard. I think this is leagues above that. Now, you'll kind of wait to see my Die Hard review, and you'll know how much praise that is. Basically, to say this is leagues above it. But yes, Jimmy Stewart, Frank Capra, who I've not really seen any of his other films yet, but I've got a couple of them on Blu-ray and stuff, and cannot wait to dig in. I've also got a book on Frank Capra that I'll be reading at some point. But yes, basically, this film I was really anticipating it. I had seen before this Vertigo, Rear Window, a couple of other Jimmy Stewart's, and basically, I was absolutely pumped to see it. And by the end of it, I said without a doubt that is in my top 25 of all time. So this now, and it's actually higher than that, on the rewatches. This film is one of the top 5 probably best films that I've reviewed. Certainly my favourites on this channel now. It's a record that keeps getting broken. I've been reviewing a lot of masterpieces recently, a lot of films that are in my top whatever, top 30 even, and this film is one of my, really when I think of cinema, when I think of warm films, ones that uplift, ones that move, this is right near the top of the list. And Jimmy Stewart, as I've said before, my second favourite actor, and after I saw this, it came pretty close between that and De Niro. But Jimmy Stewart, he's so much great films he's in, and kind of always giving a great performance. And Vertigo would be second in line, but this one is by far the best performance by him. It's probably for me one of the top 5 performances of all time in cinema, and it's just absolutely wonderful. It ranges from kind of upbeat and jolly to kind of really dark and very it's aggressive at times in the film as well. His character of George Bailey. And yes, basically this film, the basic premise, I'm not going to get into it too much, but there will be some spoilers probably coming because I will be discussing the ending. And yes, basically, George Bailey is a character who right at the beginning you hear some prayers, kind of people worried about George, and his family and everything, and basically it becomes clear that he's not happy and he's going to do something drastic. And then of course you see kind of the universe, you see the angels kind of talking to each other in a wonderful, fantastical sequence. And of course Clarence is the one that's sent down, eventually to help out George Bailey and help him see the light and stop doing what he's about to do. So yes, very risky film, you could say, in subject matter as well and stuff. And the fact that this is a Christmas film, it's very dark. But again, one of the most joyous films of all time. And of course, Clarence, his mission is to go back to Earth and kind of in order to get his wings as well. But yes, basically, that's his mission. And you see George Bailey's life in flashbacks, but really it's only really the childhood stuff. You see some more touchdown with the angels, and then the rest of the film really until that point, which is the kind of final act. It is just kind of plays out like a normal narrative and stuff. There's no more chopping and changing, kind of in between flashbacks. It's not like that. It's just kind of that is the main majority of the film is that it plays out like a normal life film, kind of biopic, what a biopic would kind of play out like, and so much so and so engrossing that you kind of forget that event's about to happen, you know, at some point. And, you know, I got so caught up in it, and, you know, this film is perfection. You know, I think all the characters in this film are absolutely wonderful, and you know, it's just one of the truest and purest examples of just a human film, you know, in cinema. And of course, the childhood sequence itself is truly wonderful. You know, this film really has me moved, and kind of completely invested in every, you know, second of the film, from the very beginning. And this sequence alone is just wonderful. You know, I really loved it. It shows how much of a caring character George is. You know, even as a kid, and how, you know, he kind of, there's points where he changes different things. You know, and also, of course, the shopkeeper that, you know, he kind of is in the shop with, basically saves his life there. So it's truly wonderful stuff. You know, life affirming. And of course, you see different characters set up, introduced in this act. Even you know, his brother Harry, and, you know, just Mary as well, of course, who becomes his wife. It's just absolutely wonderful. I loved how this film has such a wonderful scope, you know, and it kind of just plays out like a kind of exploration of a man's life, just in general. You know, it's not necessarily a Christmas film, you know, and of course it wasn't really seen as that, you know, at the time. But of course, because of the reruns and everything, and people kind of, you know, it does end, you know, in that way. You know, it is kind of a Christmas film, of course, but it is on its own just one of the most moving films ever made. And yes, basically, you see all these characters. Mary, the relationship there is set up very, very charming, and yeah, it's just wonderful. And then it leads, of course, into the kind of early stages of Jimmy Stewart's life, George Bailey's life, and of course you see the kind of the dance, and all that kind of stuff, which is some of the most uplifting moments for me in cinema. The romance, once that develops, with Jimmy Stewart and Donna have such a great chemistry, and the two characters there, because of the writing, you know, co-written by Capra, because of everything, you know, how much magic and heart this has in the film. You know, I think it's one of the top 10 probably romances in film. I absolutely adored it, you know, and every time it's gotten better and better. It's such a comforting film, and the themes of family, and all this kind of stuff, and just value of life, are definitely, you know, even more people kind of respond to that at kind of Christmas time. Well, for me, all the time, but, you know, I think that's the reason I'll be revisiting this film, because it's such a uplifting film. It's so powerful, it's so sincere, and it's just so comforting. You know, I will return to see this character's life of George, you know, George Bailey's life, every time. It's so wonderful. You know, I think this film, you know, it's grown on me each time even more, and it was already in my top 25 kind of thing. Now this film is even higher, and it just truly is an absolute magnum opus. You know, I think Frank Capra, you know, has, you know, especially, you know, back when he was making films, at times he was criticised by critics, you know, for being too sentimental, you know, and that happens with quite a few directors, Robert Zemeckis, you know, Spielberg, of course, as well. You know, if it's not completely depressing, you know, it could get criticised, and if it is, you know, it's just a shame, really. But, you know, this film had been called that, and I just think it really, that's not the case. Yes, it is, of course, warm and full of heart, and it's very, very uplifting and jolly at times, but really as well, the final act kind of puts that to rest. You know, the final act is, wow, some of the most powerful stuff in cinema. You know, I think this is up there with, you know, kind of, well, yeah, some of a certain Chaplin film for certain moments that really truly move, you know, and it is really something else. I think Jimmy Stewart's acting is monumental. It's easily in the top 10 performances of all time. Donna is so wonderful in this film. This is one of my favourite things, is the romance in this film. It is so pure, uplifting, meaningful, and it's so much fun as well. You know, I love how they kind of, throughout the film, the first hour or so, you know, probably about the first hour, you kind of, you know, the relationship is up and down. They kind of come, you know, in and out of each other's lives, kind of thing, and, you know, different things happen, of course, and yeah, it's just such a kind of one that when it does eventually fall into place and they do start a family, it's so satisfying, you know, and it's just so wonderful that it kind of didn't originally, you know, kind of all form, but of course they did love each other from kind of a certain moment very early on, and the scene as well, of course, the moon and the lasso, is one of the greatest scenes in cinema. It's so perfect. You know, the script of course, is one of the best in film for me. It's truly meaningful. It works so well for comedy as well. This film is very, very funny, especially early on. It's hilarious. There's so many different characters as well that are hilarious in the film. And of course, Thomas Mitchell is in the film as one of the main characters. He is such an amazing actor. He was in, of course, High Noon, Gone with the Wind, and he was so amazing in that, and in this as well. He just always adds something to the films that he's in. Really, just the charm, especially. That's what I'd say. He's so good in this film, and just the whole cast, perfect. And it's just the perfect structure of the film, the different acts, and then of course the redemption at the end. This film is so wonderfully shot. All the snow effects as well, and all this kind of stuff. It's so wonderful. And it's just the use of lighting. It's got this fantastical feel, of course, which it's meant to have, and it's some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. It really is something else, and the editing is perfect. The direction is absolutely flawless. This is a mind-blowing film. It's just so human. The characters, not just Jimmy Stewart's character and Donna Reed's, the whole, it's an ensemble piece, and of course even the kids, they're all perfect. It's such a flawless film for me, and it's such a one that it goes beyond that. It really is one of the most spiritual films. That's when I broke down at the end when I first saw it. I have every time, but it's just such a spiritual film. It appears as a family film, in many areas, but it is one of the most deepest and moving films. It truly is, and it has such an atmosphere, and it really is as well. The location, of course, is meant to be called Bedford Falls, in the film, and it's made kind of like this really. Yeah, this place, of course, Jimmy Stewart's character of George Bailey wants to escape from this in different moments of his life, and then of course, and he has aspirations, but of course he gets tied into the building and loan company, kind of within the family business, and of course, things happen, people die quite early on, and he's left with that, of course, and you see, of course, through that, yes, you see how he kind of he gives just to the public and stuff, but also just how he's tied down to this and he can't quite achieve what he wants to, certainly early on. And basically, even though this happens, it does actually show the meaning of family and everything, and how he has, changed all these people's lives within the town. And of course, that's the final act, but it really comes into play there. You have to see the whole film to really judge everything, as well, the kind of things that are set up in the first act and all this. It really, and then when you rewatch it becomes even better. But this film was instantly one of my top 25, and it's just grown on me even more each time. This film is just, wow. The final act of this is as well, of course, you see all the different people in the town, and how, if he wasn't ever born, how of course things would have been very, very different, and of course for the worse. And of course, that scene when he says, I want to live, it is just one of the probably top 10 or so most moving scenes I've ever seen. It is truly something else. It's pure magic, this film, and the final act is just constantly emotional as well. And just the ending. Let's quickly talk about the ending. Spoilers, of course. This ending is probably one of the top 5 as well. Wow. The first time I saw it, I couldn't believe it, and just the way it ends on the shot of them just happy again. Of course, Jimmy Stewart finally returns to his family, and all the other characters come into it as well. Harry comes back just at the right moment, and of course they sing Auld Lang Syne, and it's one of the greatest moments that I'll ever see. For me, it's one of the top 5 endings probably, and I think could not have been better. The overwhelming emotions that I get from this, of course, right before that as well, you've got so much kind of sad and melancholy moments, and then you've got the wow. I mean, to define really uplifting, you should watch the ending of this. We'll watch the film and then see the ending. It's just truly something else. And yes, for sure, this is a magnum opus, of cinema. So overall, of course, I absolutely adore this film. It's wonderful, of course, on Blu-ray. There is a colour version. We'll pretend that doesn't exist, and it's quite annoying that the main menu is the colour version. Yeah, I know, it's very annoying. And of course, it does come with some art cards as well and a poster, I believe. So I'll actually be, at some point making a kind of collage, down the line, of kind of art cards that I'll probably put up somewhere in my room. This will have, it will have some of these ones on there as well. Can't wait for that. And yes, this film, of course, it is one of my favourites of all time. And yes, once again, because we've been doing quite a lot of these recently, very, very high, my highest rating films, and of course, E.T., 2001. This film is no exception, and actually I do prefer it to 2001. Not quite as good as E.T., but this film is one of the very best I've reviewed, and of course, gets an easy 100% plus, tier S, an absolute magnum opus that will really... it is one of my favourite films of all time, and I think it's just going to grow me each time more and more, and this time it's definitely the best that I've kind of experienced with this, and it's got such a feeling of wonder, magic. It's such a spiritual film, and it's just a pure family film. In many ways, a human drama, a romance that's, for me, as I've said, is one of the best in film, and it's got a contender, for the greatest ending of all time. It's right up there for me with City Lights, Lord of the Rings as well. E.T. definitely the ending to that, and just so many more. 2001 has got one of the best endings as well, but this one is so good. I think it's definitely the top 10, and it's just really to define how a film can come together, in every sense, and how it can kind of, just make a strong message in terms of humanity and how warm it is, how uplifting the ending is, and it's just, you got that fade where it's right in the midst of them just in their most happy, that you've seen them in the film. They're all together, and he finally realises, Jimmy Stewart's character of George Bailey, the true meaning of what he's, his life anyway, and just, it is one of the most human films I've ever seen, and if you've not seen the film, you have to see it. I was very, very late to seeing it, and of course I was over 18 years when I first saw it. It's 2016, so it doesn't matter, that if you've never seen it yet, and it's a film that you've been wanting to get around to, but not quite seen it yet, because it really will not matter. And of course, with most films, I do prefer now anyway to when I was a kid. But this film, it's truly wonderful. Its script, its direction, it's flawless. The performances are absolutely mesmerising. Donna Reed is perfect. Jimmy Stewart, one of the top 5 performances of all time. For me, up there with Chaplin in a certain film, yes. Peter O'Toole in Lawrence of Arabia, and a couple of De Niro performances. This is how good the film is, how Jimmy Stewart is in the film, and basically everything about this film, the cinematography, the editing, the score, which is wonderful, and just the warmth that comes through, and how it really just moves me beyond most films. Very nearly the most moving film of all time, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. It's Wonderful Life is a truly wonderful film, and if you've not seen it, as I say, you have to check it out. You probably won't be disappointed. It's one of the most loved films of all time, for a reason. This is a film that I am completely obsessed with, and it's just, it always, it's one of them films that really, it's why I love classic cinema more. You don't make films that feel like this, or mostly as good as this anymore. It's just truly wonderful. Frank Capra, I think, when I see most of his films, he's probably going to become one of my favourite directors. If this is anything to go by, and it's just a truly wonderful film. My favourite of the 1940s, which is a rare, feat. I absolutely love so many films there, and it actually, it does surpass another Chaplin film, which is really high on my list as well. It's Wonderful Life, a truly wonderful piece of cinema, one that really makes me cry every time, makes me laugh, kind of transfix me with the kind of the narrative, the characters, the journey that we go through. The town is such a wonderful place. It's just a nostalgic place. Is how it's portrayed, and the fact that it's kind of in this town for most of the film, and you get to know the different characters. You see them throughout different moments, and it's kind of one of them films like Back to the Future, where the different kind of events that could have happened play on you so much, and you get so invested in it. And it was very, very much like Back to the Future. And actually very, very close, in terms of quality and preference, actually. We'll say that. So yes, thanks for watching my review, and yes, of course, coming up will be The Apartment as well. Can't wait to see that. I'll be seeing that around the next couple of days. Well, I aim to see it tonight. The review will be up in the next couple of days, and yes, Hope you have a great new year as well, if I don't review another one by then. And thanks for watching my review.